Welcome, everyone, to our cross-border conversation on strategies for getting film and other content seen. How do you get your screen stories in front of audiences? Thank you to our speakers who are drawn from the Screencraftverse community, and thank you to Genelec for supporting this series of talks.
So I'm Adrienne Williams. I am, creator, writer, producer, presenter of a series called Repatriate Stories. I am from Jamaica, and I'm really interested in telling stories about people who choose to return home to their little islands after being away for a long time. I'm actually a mentee this year with Emma Whitlock, who has been amazing. And I'll go ahead and pass to Amit.
I'm Amit Kaur. I am a post producer and now turned into a filmmaker. I'm originally from India, now based in the UK, making my way into the industry and creating films. And I'm very much interested in human led stories. So that's how I am here. And I'm very interested in understanding the changing patterns of audiences. And that's why I'm here and looking forward to meeting everybody. Yeah.
So my name is Danae Grandison. I'm Jamaican born and raised, now living in Brooklyn as a filmmaker. I write, direct, and produce, or I'm known for producing short films. And I'm currently in development with my first feature based on my short Unspoken, which I'll use as part of my discussion today. And hopefully we can see how I have tried to break the format of using a short film in a marketing capacity, because generally they're harder to navigate or to push.
I am a Bulgarian-born naturalized Jamaican living in Jamaica. And I am a writer, director, producer, and editor, visual storyteller, because I actually come from photography as well. So I'm a visual storyteller, and I'm very excited to be here amongst all of you. I'm also a mentee in the Screencraftworks program this year. And I am also excited to share some mistakes that I've made that I want, that, I'd like for other people not to make, or for somebody to have told me, don't do this.
I'm Jane Gull from London in the UK. I'm a writer director. I've also produced. And just to give you a bit of a background about how I got into filmmaking, I come from a theatre and performance background. I actually worked as a professional dancer for many years and got to travel the world, which was amazing, and which has inspired my stories and the stories I want to tell. So far, I've made 2 independent feature films, about 10 short films, a feature documentary, and I'm currently in production on a feature documentary, and got about 10 other projects in various stages of development. Hopefully one of them will get made soon.
My sort of road to film was a little bit zigzaggy, if I can use that word. I thought that I would be a correspondent for National Geographic. That was my dream. So I always loved to write as well. And so I figured if I'm a writer and a photographer, I have double the chances to get more jobs. And so I went to journalism school. And at the time, it was still divided into print and digital and broadcast. And I was in the print, long form print. And suddenly I realized that my forte is actually the visual side of things, not so much the writing. And so I pivoted, and that's how I got into documentary filmmaking. So I specialized in documentaries. And when I came to Jamaica, I was here at a time when the film industry was really starting to grow and to become more of a community with the Jamaica Film and TV Association. And that's how I met a lot of my collaborators, and I found a lot of inspiration. I always say I have Bulgarian roots and Jamaican wings, because Jamaica has just been such fertile soil for my creativity, and so inspiring as a culture, as a people, as an environment. And that's how I started creating fiction work as well. So I did an animated short, which was extremely hard to make. And then I I'm now making live action as well. So I did a short that we're gonna see at some point, the trailer of, called Stinky Mango. And that's the prequel to my feature film in development called Mango Magic.
I forgot to mention I'm also a mentee of the program this year, and my mentor happens to be Jane. So I get to be in this conversation with her as well, and it's been an awesome journey with this particular short. It turned into a feature. So how did I get here? I started out, my career path is interesting. I remember I went back to do my master's. I was inspired to think about considering film, and I'm coming from a graphic designer turned filmmaker. And in the writing of the essay, as I'm applying to school to see, why should you consider me? I then remember the little girl when she was like 10, 11, that used to watch commercials on Jamaica TV, and thought to myself, when I used to go to the States, how can I bring those two worlds together? And that's when it really started. But I forgot about that little girl. And when I found myself still at art school for advertising, I still didn't connect that was something that a medium I wanted to be in. And in making my first short film, which was like a silent film, 1 minute, and it took me a minute to even like put the pieces together for like, how do I tell who, what, where, when? What does this mean? Why does this feel so challenging? Why are you telling me to tell stories this way? And it took a minute for me to like write that little short, and then to screen it for a small audience. And I won the audience award. And it was in sitting in the theater and feeling the audience feel that what you wanted them to experience, and they did. And you're like, oh, this is gratifying. And I then released the other creative voice I had, because I always consider advertising or graphic design as lending my voice. And in this space, I felt like I had more of control this time, because now it's really my story that I want to tell. And I took it very seriously as, if I want to see more of my story, then I have to be willing to join this conversation and add to changing the narrative and add to the perspectives, because there's so many that have not been shared.
So about me, I grew up in India, and I grew up in north part of India. And at that point, when I was in school, I wanted to be a journalist. So when Ina was telling her story, I was like, yeah, that's what I thought I'll do. And that was the only thing I knew, to be honest. I didn't know about films, and this is quite long back. So in my small town, everybody would become a doctor and engineer. Nobody would talk about cinema or films. But there was journalism, and there was print journalism, and there was television in our town. So I was very much like, I will be a news reader, and I would practice reading news. I was very passionate about it. But fast forward, I applied to a journalism school later in another part of the country. I didn't get through the journalism school, but I ended up getting into a film school, which was one of its kind at that point. And that opened up a whole new world of possibilities, which I had no idea that it existed. I was exposed to world cinema at a very early age, and I was like, wow, where was this? So that really helped me establish my roots and understand what I really want to do. And thankfully, there was no looking back. So I finished film school, went to Bombay, worked in the Indian film industry and advertising industry, and got a very hands-on experience of how films are made, how the filmmakers think about their audiences, how they create stories. So that was a very hard learning ground, so to say. So luckily, I got a chance to work in both cinema as well as advertising. So I would work as a first AD, and I would also work as a post producer. And that helped me understand clients. How does a client selling something or wanting to tell a story about something connect with their audience? So I would be in those rooms where those discussions were had, that, okay, there is this product, maybe there's a WhatsApp or a Facebook, those kind of clients, and how they assess their audiences. So that was quite a good learning ground. But the more I was in that industry, the more I felt that, why am I not telling my stories? And I'm always the one delivering somebody else's story, making sure it happens, making sure it's done a certain way. So that really pushed me to take charge of things. And luckily, through my post-production work, I got an opportunity to move to the UK. I was doing the BBC series Suitable Boy. So the moment I was moving to the UK was also the time I was making that decision that I will now leave post-production and become a full-time director. But that's not so easy. So after moving to the UK, I tried to learn about the industry. Luckily, I got a grant from BFI to make a short film. And since then, I have been trying to build my network, learn more about the industry, find more collaborators, and continue making short films. And after almost 6 years in the industry, now at this stage, I can say I have a project in development, a feature project, which has got into a lab, which I'm very proud of, but can't share right now. So it's been quite a long journey, but I am, again, like, it took me some time to even decide on the fact that, yes, I should be a director, but I'm very glad I made that transition.
Sonia.
I have a PhD in engineering. I still currently work in engineering, but I spent a lot of time being the audience and thinking about what I want to watch. And I wanted to watch more stories, more oral histories, and I wanted to watch things that were a little bit more accessible. So I think maybe compared to all of my colleagues here, I'll talk a little bit more about episodics and shorter, maybe not shorter by length, but projects that are features then, if you will. And I think it was really important for me to identify, we'll come to the point about audience, but it was kind of identify the audience. So I knew coming from Jamaica and the Caribbean, there are more Jamaicans and Caribbean people living outside of the region than there are that live inside, right? And other people might recognize this, other persons from other geographical locations. So there's this craving for content from home, and some of what gets out there isn't the most edifying or the most inspiring. And so a part of my need, right? So I started by telling you kind of what I do, which is very far away from, I have no formal training in this. But I kind of take this approach that you can learn anything, and that when you pay attention enough and consume enough of something, that you can kind of practice and toddle along until you get there. And so that was kind of my approach until I got to the point of saying, hey, you know what? I want to see more stories about people who actually choose home and what these success stories mean, right? What are people who are coming from a place where it feels like everybody's trying to leave? What are they actually doing? They're coming back. They're coming against people who are saying, like, are you dumb? What are you doing? They will literally say that to you, right? Why do you want to be there? It's so hard. Everybody's struggling. And that might be true, right? So we're not just selling fairy tales, but I think it's important to tell these stories. And so I went ahead and found a team. I'm on a university campus, and people need internships. People need opportunities to learn, just like I'm learning. And so I kind of took this approach that, you know, things don't have to be perfect the first time. All of us here have shared some version of a story that's starting from a 1-minute film or something small that we're trying to develop, and we build each time to the point where we're getting grants for features, right? And so I guess what I'm trying to say is a few things. Is I guess the way where you start doesn't determine where you're gonna go, right? What you've been trained in or not trained in. And also, it's very much okay to make what you want. Sometimes, God, I feel like I'm getting to the end of the advice. But sometimes, right, we find these grant calls, money, resources always are a thing, right? And you see these grant calls that are asking for this one specific thing, and then you decide, do you want to bend yourself into whatever that box is for that grant? Maybe, maybe not. But, you know, just remember that what you want to make is valid, and then try to make that thing.
There were young children in Jamaica at the time of Jamaica independence, but you say you remember being in prep school at that time. Tell us about that time.
I remember being in prep school on Glenmore Road in Franklin Town at Independence. And when we got to school, they gave us all a little paper flags, on a little stick, so that we could, we were told to sing the national anthem, the new national anthem, and we waved our little flags. And so, it's nice to have an actual memory of the Day of Independence.
My first experience behind a camera and on a set was as an actor. Behind the camera was as a choreographer, so choreographing, working closely with DPs and directors. And then I wrote a short film. I'd been writing for theatre and directing some theatre. Wrote a short film, applied to what was the UK Film Council for their digital short scheme, and surprisingly to myself got through that and got funding to make the film. But wasn't actually supposed to direct it. The director actually had to pull away from the project. So I was kind of encouraged and thrown in at the deep end, but very much encouraged by the brilliant execs on the project who really believed in me, I guess. And I'm so glad that happened, because that was the moment I realised, oh, actually, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. That was a real turning point. But I guess we should talk a little bit about what we're here to talk about, and it's how to get our film seen, because things have really changed. So my first short film I made, oh gosh, it was probably about 18 years ago. And when I made that film, I didn't know anything, which actually is quite a nice position to be in, because it's almost like naivety and just making it and thinking, oh, well, we're going to make it. And, we got some funding for this short film, so people are going to watch it. Well, actually, when I look back, we didn't really do much with that short film. I think we applied to a couple of festivals because I didn't have a clue how that whole, the festival system worked. And then, you learn, don't you, as you go along. And, some of the short films I've made have been better than others. I probably learnt more from the ones that weren't so successful. And then the next sort of turning point was when I made a short film called Sunny Boy, which actually went on to do well in terms of festivals, but also got picked up by Arte TV in France and Germany and Channel 4 in the UK. So that actually, doing that short film really changed things, and then went on to make a feature film. That was nearly nine years ago. So when we came to distribute that, again, the team that made that film had never made a feature film before. So we were kind of learning on the job almost. And that was really a real interesting process. The last feature film that I made, which we really wanted a theatrical release. It was really important for me and for the whole team to see it on the big screen, because I don't know about you guys, there's nothing like seeing a film on the big screen. So we were fortunate to get a UK distributor, but the actual theatrical release we done ourselves. We applied to a couple of film festivals. So we had we were fortunate to get into the London Independent Film Festival and the Manchester Film Festival, which were in March and April. So then we had our cinema theatrical release 8 weeks later. So we used that, the promotion, and we were fortunate to win awards at both of those festivals. So that gave us some publicity for the theatrical release. And then the film obviously is available on the digital platforms in the UK, Ireland, the States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and South America.
That's incredible. I must say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real labor of love. And I think, like, as you guys all know, when you start on a project, I think especially on a feature length project, it is quite a different beast actually to a short film, because more money's involved. You might have investors that need to be paid back, so it's kind of, it feels like a lot of weight on your shoulders, a lot of responsibility. But I think having a producer that you will go the extra mile with, and Karen Newman, who produced Love Without Walls, she literally done the work of about 15 people, if not, no, 50 actually, not 15, about 50 people. That relationship you have with the producer, and just, you know, the work that you have to put in to get your film out there, you have to take it to the people.
Can you talk about how you got it on the streamers? Was that a result of winning the awards and having the theatrical? Like, did you have to approach them? Did they approach you? How did that?
Yeah, good question, Ina. So basically what happened was we made the film. We didn't have a distributor in place before we'd made the film. So we made the film, then took it out to distributors. And Bulldog Film Distribution, who are a wonderful UK-based distributor, took on the film, and they took it on at about the time that we went to the Manchester Film Festival, because that was the other thing. We decided not to like blast the film festivals like with previous films. With my first feature film, we actually premiered in America at CineQuest, and done lots of festivals before we got a distribution deal. But with this recent feature, we actually made a point of we didn't want it at so many festivals, especially in the UK, because festivals are amazing and they obviously were such a great platform for our film. But when people are buying those tickets to go and watch the film, it's not coming to you, it's going to the film festival. And it's not just about the money side of things, but actually about, you know, you physically want people to go out. If you're going to do a theatrical release, you want people to go to the cinemas to see it. So we thought, okay, let's do one in the north of England. That was Manchester, which we thought was perfect because, yeah, we just thought that was a perfect festival for our film. And then London, at the London Independent Film Festival, it was, which is held at the wonderful Genesis Cinema in Mile End, which is just up the road from me. So I didn't have far to travel for that one, but it's a beautiful independent cinema. And that created a buzz. The actual theatrical release, we done that ourselves. That wasn't part of, the distributor supported the theatrical release, but we chose to do that. It wasn't something they might necessarily have done because it was an independent film, and you're competing against all the other films for slots at the cinema. As we all know, I'm sure that's the same in your countries. I'm sure it's not an isolated thing. I don't know, it'd be really interesting to know actually what the cinema model is and how it works in your countries for independent films.
When I did Unspoken the short, and I'm collecting information, as I attended any workshop I could that would talk about distribution, how to get funded, and etc. And this is pre-COVID, this lovely timeline we have. So like in between 2018 and 2019, the model is you create your feature, and what is the reality of getting a distribution deal in the film festival world, and not overshowing your film, but just hitting the right marks because you don't want to saturate it as well. And because if you're collecting laurels, there's so many reasons why you only do enough for the film festival with a feature. And then everybody wants a theatrical release. And it's either, if you don't get picked up by a distributor, you are possibly doing an independent run. And I sat in like a workshop talking about what does it mean for you to find the money to hit the road, go across the US. And this one is definitely targeted to the US. Go cross country, find the small little theaters, and probably be able to run for 1 to 2 weeks. So imagine in my business plan pre-COVID, that was a part of it. Like I must have my 1-year festival run, and then I must quickly move over to theatrical. And what do I see my end vision before I hit streaming? And streaming was the end point. Like the goal was festival, theatrical release, and then get a streaming, or back then, you know, DVD. You're trying to get to that other tangible, always accessible life for your film, so to speak.
Miss Caroline, why do I have to go?
What? What the hell?
Harry, I need you to get up. I think it's time.
You know what I feel for? Is oxtail this evening. But that would take all day to cook. You have somewhere else to be?
Where does your feature toe on the timeline of COVID? Was it released and were you doing the self-funded theatrical run in 2019, 2020? And then as we crossed over, you picked up a streaming deal, or did this happen post-COVID with your feature journey?
We were all set to make another film, a period drama, which we had potentially finance in place, and we were gearing to shoot that. COVID happened, that all stopped. The producer and I were just like, we really want to do something. This was a script that I'd written 10 years ago. And there was something happened during COVID, which made me so angry that I was like, I need to tell this blimmin' story. So we just thought, okay, let's do it. So we actually shot it during COVID in 2021. That made it difficult, but at the same time, I do wonder whether we would have ever made this film if it hadn't have been for COVID. And I don't think we would have, because we're able to get locations. There was crew available. There was so many things that kind of went in our favour, like the streets were empty. Obviously, the downside was, we had to test every day or every 2 days, and, directing in a mask was tricky. So we shot it during COVID, and then it was released after.
Because it's interesting how when streaming took over, it kind of just changed everyone's wants.
Yes.
Like the theatrical didn't necessarily become the big thing anymore. It's almost like we're streaming quicker than we are looking for a theatrical release, just because of the costs.
Yes, and I think actually one of the reasons why we really wanted to do the theatrical was because people hadn't been going out to the cinema. Maybe there was some slots more available, but also just to have that experience. Yeah. And because of the subject matter of the film, it was really important to us that we wanted to get out and talk to people, because, to have a discussion about the issues in the film. And that was really important to both me and Karen, the producer. And we went to areas where there were, I think it was actually 33 different cinemas that we went to in total, but some of them had runs for like a week. And it wasn't just the independent cinemas that took it. It was like, I don't know if you know the Odeon cinemas here, but it was in particular areas where we would say to them, look, we know we're going to get an audience here because the film set here, or there was actors that were from that area, or various things. And then at some screenings, we had events like live music, because it's a music drama, and Q&As and that type of thing. But it was a lot of work. It was literally driving up and down the motorway. We'd only do the Q&As for maybe the first night, and then we would head off to the next place. We did have a PR company who came on board to help promote it in those areas, but then also it was a case of Karen driving, because I don't drive, down the motorway for 6 hours while I'm on the phone ringing up local radio stations, newspapers, saying, hey, we're coming to town.
You spoke about PR and about promotion, and I have a lot to say about that, because I think that's so important. I think a lot of us here might be thinking about getting to festivals and how we show and how we distribute broadly, which is where streaming comes in, and that new end game of having as many people as possible watch it and having that larger platform take care of that. But I wanted to interject about, that point about having people in the individual towns or locales know that it's coming, right? That is hard. I think. And it's really important, because especially when we talk about independent and you're doing something, and we all just want people to watch our work. And also to the point about events and Q&As, right? So we make the work, and maybe you have the actor who's from that town or so, and then you want people to come out, and maybe people are interested. So I did have a question for if you found that in COVID time where people were stir crazy if they came out more, and if that changed after, because I've had the experience that trying to have an event, a screening event, it's like, I tell them it's free. And it's like pulling teeth anyways. Like, I don't want to leave the house. And I don't know if that's just like a Kingston, Jamaica thing, or just a thing right now overall, if other people have had that experience of persons not wanting to leave the house.
I think that's pretty universal, and I think for lots of reasons, not just because people have got used to being indoors, but I think it's a financial thing as well. I think there's lots of elements, and it's very worrying actually. I mean, the cinema that we in the Odeon in Camden in London that done really well, that's closing next year, and it's really sad. But I think the film community, we need to support each other, especially with the independent films. Even things like when your film goes onto a streamer, I was like really shocked how many people, and I'm not talking about people outside of the industry, I'm talking about other filmmakers who would say, oh, can you send me the link? And I'm like, well, you can, it's like, you know, £4 the price of a coffee. Oh, I'll wait for it to come onto Tubi when it's free. And I think, you know, if we're not supporting the independent films, how are we thinking that, you know, people that have no connection to our films will? So
Yeah, just to add to that, so I also work for a film festival, which is UK Asian Film Festival, and it happens in London. And our primary focus is especially emerging filmmakers and filmmakers who may not always get selected or access to the A-tier festival. So our focus is on the talent who wants to, move up the ladder, may have made one short film and moving on to the second one, or made their first feature. And recently in post-COVID, I have also seen that, yes, getting audience into the room is challenging, but just based on certain personal experiences. So I also curate programs for the festival, and I do focus on the film co-production space, and I organize panels during the film festival to connect emerging directors with emerging producers so that they can find each other and make feature films. And this is just from the last 2 years, if I may say. So what I started doing, this is specifically for the UK though, that in my network of people, I started doing one-to-one reach out that, hey, I'm doing something in 6 months timeline, and this will give you this XYZ. So at least I saw bigger turnout in that, but it's a lot of work. I literally did like WhatsApp messages, emailing people I'm doing something, and also trying to find producers or people who can help these emerging filmmakers. So it, like Jane said, it's very much about supporting each other. So outreach is helpful, but it's a lot of work. And I've seen that impact when you have a film screening happening and you probably collaborate with an organization that can expand your outreach, but it's a task. Even for filmmakers, it's a cost to travel, to come to cinema. So all those factors are impacting the audience.
I think the challenge has always existed. And I think our biggest challenge still lands with, is it COVID that has made people more content staying home? Because I'm remembering my short film Unspoken, which is before COVID, and even that journey and the effort, it's the same effort I did then. If I'm going to LA for an LA premiere, I'm now calling Jamaica consulate. I'm trying to find every Caribbean community I can possibly find. It's hard to find for short films a PR person. I found someone, got me some write-ups which are fine, and they'll be on smaller local newspapers, but you're doing all that extra work. And I did that because I'm turning it into a feature, and I'm trying to make sure I land all my breadcrumbs. So I find like the work is still the same before and after, with that challenge remaining, that how do you get people to leave their homes? Because even me as a filmmaker at times, I forget. I'm like, oh, there's this festival I want to go to, and if I'm not in it, I'm not going. Recently, I was on a panel, it was a Caribbean networking panel, and I was the only filmmaker amongst all the three. And one of the questions was to the audience, or what we had to tell the audience about ourselves. What do we want to, where could we get more support? And I would put out to them, like, you guys want to see more Caribbean content, you have to support the films. And then the questions came up, which is, but I don't know how to find them. How do I know? And then that becomes the next reality. Film festivals has a particular audience. How do you bring the audience that is not seeking out film festivals, that are really just moviegoers, that want to wait for the big theater and the streaming? How do we get them to understand the importance and bring in our little nest egg to them? And you might only get your nest egg to come to the big premiere in your local town. And then after that, you know, it just feels, it will always be a forever hard work. But I do find one of the biggest challenges is how do you leave the world of people that do not follow independent film and let them know this exists and why it's important for them to attend?
Okay, I would like to jump in to say social media. We love it. We hate it. It's our best friend and our biggest enemy. Sometimes it feels like it cheapens the work we do, but I think that's where everybody is. I myself don't typically use Instagram, but people who are looking, they're literally looking for something to watch. They are literally looking for something to watch. And if your work is, and I'm all over work, you have all amazing work, it's finding the snippet, it's finding the promotional clip for the event that's coming up. And I think it is a lot of work. And I think sometimes we think, oh man, well, if we don't have enough followers, it doesn't matter anyway. But a small budget does a lot, or even when we do have a lot of followers, I find that it actually, the algorithm wants you to pay for things. So someone who's following you already but doesn't exist in your location right now, it's not going to reach them. You have to go tell them it's there, right? Which means the WhatsApp posts, the blast, the updates, whatever you call it. And I think it's just a reality about where people are. TikTok. Finding a way to make it digestible and fun for people, even the grandma who you think, oh, she doesn't need something that's super catchy and is very well captioned, and yeah, she probably does, you know, with a nice little song to go ahead with it, and tell them you're at this event. I don't know if any of you follow kind of the Book Talk community or any of these kind of publishing houses that with every release every month they are telling you, and these are like the top, what they call it, top 3, top 5. They're telling you everywhere that they are. And I'm sure we all do this, but I think we shouldn't discount how far that can go for getting to the people in between, the ones who are or are not festival goers, the ones who are or are not looking for feature films, the ones who just want to watch you have that interview on local telly or whatever it is. And I think the people who do that work, because we're doing so much creating the films and putting all our creative energy into managing our scripts and manage our productions, that we don't really have it in us to also go make an extra edit for Instagram. And I actually think those people are worth every dollar, because they do that thought, the captioning, the hashtags and the tagging the right people and the collab posts. And the last thing I'll say about sort of how to get to people and events and PR is maybe we're not yet, I know personally, I am not yet at the point of being able to hire someone to do PR specifically, who are going to make connections with local radio, with local press, with other PR groups and so on. But I've actually decided, if I had to give one tip for someone who's really just starting, is to actually not try to throw any events on your own. And I think this goes with the tips that everyone else has given about kind of trying to get in with and supporting each other. Your money just goes down the drain. I've done it. I've tried to do an individual screening. I've paid for the location for a couple of hours. I've tried to do food. I'm like, people like free food, come out for free food, and they will not leave for free food. They will not come for free dinner because they're like, yeah, I have to get up, put on clothes, I have to put gas in the car, all these things, childminders. So I actually think it's, if you want to get people to see what you're doing, it's to give them a taste online for free where they are, which is Instagram and TikTok these days, maybe Facebook still for some of our, depending on the age group, but they tend to, the Facebook ages they're aging. And also for just trying to hop onto, and sometimes festivals have a fee to submit, but if there's something that just wants to show, they just want to have films to show, just try to tag along. If it doesn't combat your, not overexposure goals, to just try to tag along, because they're strengthening numbers and you'll just waste your money trying to get 30 people to show up. And then you'll feel like double crap because you spent money and nobody came. I'll stop now.
If I can just quickly touch upon, actually, Adrian, that was lovely. Like you put it across very lovely. But Diane said something like, landing on your tiny breadcrumbs and touching upon what Adrian just said. I want to club that and add my experience on that. So I am on the journey of making my first feature, which is not connected to my short, but the themes are, but the world is. So what I have been doing for the past 1 year is building my audience in a soft, organic way, which is not same as PR, which is very different. Eventually, all of us will need PR, we will need marketing. But at this stage, when I don't have the resources or the team, what am I doing is, since my short film was finished, which was almost 1.5 years ago, initially, obviously, like everybody else, I was waiting for those prestigious festival selections, which took a lot of time. And then I didn't get selected in the places I was really hoping for, but the selections came from places that I was never expecting. So then I gradually started understanding where is my short film getting selected, and those are certain kind of communities which are relating to obviously the themes of the film, or maybe they're women oriented or diaspora oriented. And I started obviously attending those events, but starting connecting with other filmmakers, producers, film programmers, telling them about myself and telling them about my next project. And the two features that I'm developing right now, they are about diaspora, South Asian diaspora and African diaspora, which put me in a very unique place, but interesting place. And what I have realized in the past 1 year, what has happened is, through my active engagement with people on the ground who are watching my short film at a festival, or I am attending a festival out of love, I have started getting calls from people to be part of other events or panels to talk about my experience. And I use that to segue and talk about my feature. It's a very soft, very, very long process. I do understand that. But what that has helped me is already, at least in my network, people know that I'm okay. This is a project that I'm about to make. And maybe in 2 years' time, when it actually gets made, I would have built that attention for myself. And I am also using social media. I intentionally try and reach out to people who are working in similar space, not necessarily filmmakers, but maybe impact producers or cultural organizations working in similar space. Like one of my film is about hair. I just reach out to hair organizations or makeup artists, just trying to build a connection with them. And then they invite me to their talk. So this is just a small way of just touching upon both your points, that yes, social media is important, but if you can't always make reels or announcements, if you can't just do that, just engage with people, because this is building your audience for the long run, and that really helps.
Ina, I was really interested at the beginning when you spoke about your mistakes. I mean, be really interested to hear about your successes, but also some of those mistakes, because I think we can learn so much from that.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I just want to add something to what Amit was saying about building audience. So with my Stinky Mango and Mango Magic, that's kind of what our strategy is, to build our audience using Stinky Mango to then anticipate and, help us to also show that there is interest in films like these. The thing with Stinky Mango is that we also have like a social impact campaign with it. So Stinky Mango is a metaphor for what happens when we don't face difficult emotions, so they end up rotting inside. And so there's a lot to unpack about emotional intelligence and vulnerability and, mental and emotional well-being. And then the focus is especially on boys and men who are having a much harder time socially, individually, to express their emotions, to process their emotions, to even be in touch with their emotions. And so through this social impact campaign, what we are planning to do is have all these community screenings, school screenings, workplace screenings, and building our audience in that way. Because where Stinky Mango shows the negative effects of, emotional, unprocessed emotions, Mango Magic is kind of the next step. Like, this is what it could look like when a man is in touch with his emotions, and he can teach younger men to do the same. And this is what family dynamics could look like when we're all kind of not throwing our stinky mangoes at each other, but we're actually, cultivating our mental and emotional well-being.
You're a big man now. Big man no cry. See, emotions, them a lot like mangoes, see? If they are lucky, most of them are gonna come sweet, sweet, sweet. Some of them are gonna come sour and hard for digest.
Feel, feel.
So the vision is to, one, make change, open up dialogue, create cultural change, and also in the process, build an audience, build a community around Mango Magic and, the whole IP. The lesson that I wanted to talk about is with my first film called Freedom to Dance, which is about underground dance culture in New York and these cabaret laws that were originally from the 1920s, but were in effect in New York City up until 2017, that made dancing illegal in like a bar, unless the bar had special licenses. It's like a whole story. But so the law is very much like racist roots. And also, it goes against all forms of, freedom of expression, etc. I'm not going to get into that, but what happened was that in 2017, when there was a political will and movement to repeal the law, I was already living in Jamaica, and I was looking for support for somebody to basically bring me to New York, bring me back to New York so I can document, because it was a documentary. The Freedom to Dance is a documentary, to document sort of the movement and to kind of, to complete the film by adding, well, this is the current event on that front. And when I was reaching out to different media outlets, one of them, and I don't remember which one it was, but one of the electronic music magazines, whether it was like DJ Mag or one of those, said, well, we can't really pay you for your film, but we can stream it on our platform. And at the time, I thought, well, I'm still trying to sort of monetize this film, and actually do something more with it. And I turned down that opportunity. And I very much regret that choice, because had I gone with the film, nothing ended up happening with the film. Nobody took me up to New York. I, at that point, could not finance me going to New York and documenting what's currently happening. And so that film is still sitting in my hard drive, sitting on my Vimeo, is not getting the eyes that it really should be getting. And, I mean, it would have gotten so many more views. Like, it could have even been monetized on YouTube by now if I had gone with that offer. So, that's kind of my cautionary word. Like, if something comes along, like, really think about it and don't try to be stuck on, oh, well, I really want to make money, because that's not really what short films are about. Or I really want to sell this film somewhere. So, and I could have really gotten a lot from that. And the film could have even helped the cause, because they were in the process of they ended up repealing it one way or another, but you know, I could have been more a part of that movement so I kind of isolated myself. And yeah, it's something that I still very much regret to this day. And you know, somebody told me recently when I shared this with them, they were like, you know, maybe it's not too late. Maybe they still want to put it out there.
Have you considered, and I'm not going to remember the acronym properly, when I went back to school, I had a very short internship that I walked away from because it just didn't hit all my bells. But it is a women-led organization for documentarians and how they're structured. So, I'll look it up and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
They're set up to actually try and push your documentary to schools. Like they're a distributor for documentaries. So I'm gonna find it and send it to you. It's Women Something, and they should still be around in New York. And there are outlets. Don't give up on it. You know, we all have stories about films sitting on a computer for 20 years, 17. We know honestly, this does not happen overnight. And we know that this is always a journey. And I would just say, maybe your instincts were possibly right, maybe not. Don't beat up yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do take it and you don't get nothing from it. I put my short on a few streaming platforms thinking that, oh, never saw $1, not even the $50 they promised just for putting me on, and then they disappeared. So you never know.
Yeah. I agree with Danae, like there would still be avenues. Yeah.
Well, on that note, I actually also wanted to touch upon a distribution opportunity I was recently offered. Basically, their offer was, you pay us thousands of dollars to onboard your 3 short films, and we will then sell them to other streamers, market them to streamers, and they have this whole list of all the streamers that they say are their partners. And then we keep the revenue split is 50-50 on top of the already, upfront cost that I'm giving them. And then after the first year, there's $200 a month admin fee. And I was just like, this doesn't sound right.
Nothing sounds right. Yeah.
And I tried to negotiate things with them. I'm like, I would be willing to, let's bring down this cost and let's make the admin fee, if you make me money, I pay you the admin fee. If you don't pay me money, why am I paying you the admin fee? And also let's make this a little more industry standard where it's like 60-40 or 70-30. And they were just like, no, this is our offer. And I was just like, well, I don't think I'm gonna take it.
Like obviously you do pay distributors, but this whole admin fee, this whole system is it's a big red flag. Yeah.
Right. It sounded
It doesn't
like
work like that.
so
Yeah.
pushy as well. She's like, we have to do this today because we're missing out on opportunities. Tomorrow our people are going out to meet with Netflix.
Same old
Say
story.
Netflix. I think they said Apple. And I was just like, but
Yeah. Like Danae said that nothing happens overnight. Nothing. Like nobody's just coming and saying, hey, tomorrow we are releasing your film. It doesn't work like that.
I personally use YouTube a lot. My goal is for TV distribution, and I know I'm a ways off, not because of the quality of the product per se. I mean, we always have things we can work on technically and otherwise, but just because of where I'm really trying to go with storytelling and knowing we've started, but it's not quite there. YouTube is an amazing gem. I think if you are willing to, if you think about it as having many ideas and think about publishing on YouTube as posting one of your ideas in the way you'd post a blog post, a tweet, whatever it is, a Facebook post, especially if you have like, maybe you're working up to the big one, right? But you have smaller ones in the meantime. I think YouTube is incredible for the snowballing effect that we've talked about of kind of building the audience, having people know where to find your things, especially if you're able to do a few things. If you're able to kind of set up an expectation for when things will come out, right? So making films does not happen once a week, right? Unless you're on some ridiculous, I don't know, you have I don't know, I recently read some Harry Potter fan fiction. Unless you are working with some magic, you are not doing that once a week. But you are probably able to say, hey, come and look at us maybe once a quarter or twice a year or something. And this is what we're doing. Especially if you're doing a festival circuit, you can also record and post your talks there. So anything that you do regarding your film, and then you can start to build, and people, as your name and credibility rises, people will also use that as a resource, and so it's kind of evergreen in that way. So I actually really think that YouTube is a great place to host your thing. Now, thinking about publishing online and the fact that Google has a hand in many things, that is true. But if we're talking about just the opportunity to have anyone in the world look at something, I truly think YouTube is a great place, especially because, like myself, I've admitted I do not really use Instagram where most people are, but you don't have to have an account to go watch something on YouTube. They can watch it and leave. They don't even have to subscribe, but you want them to do that, but you don't have to, right? So those are my few words on YouTube.
Just a quick follow-up question to the YouTube conversation. Have you started monetizing? And how do you promote? Because you need to market and promote for people to be able to find your content.
I mean, that's absolutely true. It's a little bit of so everybody talks about the algorithm. It does a little bit of promotion for you if it's deemed interesting enough. Sometimes it can be, your quality can be amazing and it will push it out. Sometimes it picks up on consistently of posting, it will push it out. Sometimes it picks up on keywords. The same social media people, they're trained in these keywords. They talked about the SEO. Those things actually work. Your tags work. If you're making a film in Jamaica, the word Jamaica is going to light up across the internet. It works. If it's in Bridgerton season, we're in a 2-year wait period, and it's that time when you're making a period piece and you put some tags, it will get picked up with everything else. And so I think monetization is pretty much on YouTube specifically. You have to have within a calendar year 4,000 watch hours. This is all online, right? It's been standard for years now. 4,000 watch hours and 1,000 subscribers for long form, and for shorts, I think it's like 4 million. You can also bypass that by having like, I think 4 million views or something on one short, right? Which is like 30 seconds, 1 minute or less. So if you have a really strong clip that's like polarizing or like has a really strong reaction, you could be monetized in a week, right? So it's one of those things where people blow up, or it's a really slow rise. Nothing happens overnight, but there's a possibility with YouTube that it can happen. And I think if you're going to make the films anyway, if you've done the festival circuit and it's kind of timed out of that, just put it on YouTube. It's yours whenever. It might show up one day, somebody might go looking for it. If you are holding out hope that it will be distributed somewhere, that can still happen. Maybe I'm thinking of it very naively, but I actually don't think it hurts if you put it in one more place where people can find it just by an organic search.
And the thing nowadays with the streamers is that I hear even Netflix now is doing non-exclusive. Most streamers do non-exclusive deals because that's just the nature of the market. So it's this streamer here and that streamer there, and they don't necessarily they have different audiences.
I agree. I do think though, just like with many of our series, that you just switch. So it's on Netflix for 6 years. The Office was on Netflix, and then it went back to not Paramount, whatever studio that made it, right? And so it's no longer there. So I don't think it's a case. I mean, I don't have the legal expertise to navigate that, but I think it would just be a case of I no longer show it here and I now show it there. I don't think it's insurmountable, because if major distribution studios can navigate that and there's interest, I think it can be done. But I might just be having a very naive outlook on it.
No, just to quickly add to that, Adrian, actually in distribution, it's territories and mediums. So you always can navigate that. So that's why these non-exclusivity, and one important aspect of distribution is these in-flight deals. I know it doesn't sound fancy, but that's a lot of revenue is generated through these in-flight deals, because geographically it sits in a very interesting space. So you might have sold something to US, but you can also sell it to another airlines who might be flying into US. So that's quite an interesting permutation combination to look at. So there are all those ways to generate revenue. Yeah.
How do you get into the in-flight deals?
You can directly, like obviously every organization has their marketing PR team. So usually the distributors are in a feature film landscape, or even sometimes for short films, the distributors are the one who will reach out to different mediums. But if you're doing it as an individual, I haven't done it myself, but I would assume that these airlines would have their marketing and PR teams you can reach out to and start that conversation. But it's always helpful to have somebody who has that expertise and can take that lead for you if possible.
Right.
I
I've
wanted
tried
to
that.
also,
Sorry.
before you leave the YouTube conversation, I also want to remind everyone that YouTube is also has a paid streaming component, and it's been around for a while. So it is not as if you're still not, it's just more the premium component of YouTube. So they also will stream. And as a filmmaker, to come back to that bigger question where when do you put yourself on YouTube? Because YouTube just feels like a free-for-all. And like you might find yourself happily living in Vimeo because it feels more sophisticated and like my film is more protected and I can still stream there too. But it always really boils down, to me, it always boils down to hoping you are able to find your audience and what that consistency looks like. Because just putting yourself there and is never always enough, because there's so many vessels or outlets that we can consider.
I would like to say that I think we're living in an exciting time, because I think even 10 years ago, it was so much harder to distribute content. We didn't have all of these, we're talking about YouTube, we're talking about, Vimeo on demand, we're talking about all these streamers that just didn't exist 10 years ago. I don't know how old Netflix is. Has it been 10 years? Maybe it has. But, they were the first ones. But now there's there's a proliferation of streamers. And again, with the non-exclusive deals, like I have my animated short is on Kweli TV and on Afroland TV, and it's a very short. It's like 10 minutes with the credits, and most people probably don't watch the 2 minutes of credits, even though there's a special theme song that's specifically written for the movie. I still get like anywhere between, I don't know, $15 to $50 every quarter. Now, that's really not much, and it's not going to make back the money. But if I had it in 20 of those, it would be a sizable, amount of revenue that was coming in. It's just, again, it's hard to be, a solopreneur creative who's trying to do the creative work on the next project and the distribution on the current project. And then there's distribution on the two projects from 10 years ago and 5 years ago. And it's just, like you really need a team. And I think that's where sort of the gold is. Like, how do you find and build a team that can help push your work the same way that you would be pushing it yourself if you could clone yourself?